It's a great pleasure to have with us on exclusive with Taghreed Hussein, British author and journalist, renowned British author and journalist Louisa Young. Louisa Young, thank you so much for joining us here exclusively on Nile TV International. It's always a pleasure to have you with us in Egypt. I know that you love Egypt and you have a great passion for Egypt.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here and it's an honor for me.
6 times in Egypt, Louisa.
Yes. This is my 6th time.
This time was also a very special visit.
Yes, it was very special to be invited by the British Council as an author because I've written a lot about Egypt. I wrote about Egypt before I'd ever been here, and then I got embarrassed and thought if I'm to write more about Egypt, I really need to go and see the root of the fascination that I've always had. And I've, on my previous visits, had so much interesting stuff to do that I actually managed never to get to see the Great Pyramids until today. So this morning, after 15 years of coming to this country, for the first time I went to see the pyramids, and this is why I'm in such a good mood today. You'll see I'm smiling. I was riding a horse.
An inspirational spirit.
Oh, extraordinary.
How did you feel the magic around the pyramids, Louisa? Tell me more about it.
Well, the way that they move, you know, being on a horse, you know, in the desert, it's fantastic. You're coming up towards them, they're a long way away. And then you turn for a moment to speak to your friend, and then suddenly they're right there. And how did they do that? And this one was the biggest, but now this one's the biggest. And then it's a different color. And then the sun comes out, and it's turned into a different magical scene. Next time I'm going to sit there all day and just watch the light change and walk around them. It's beautiful.
Great that you had the spirit, and great that you started the day with visiting the pyramids. Yeah. Let me ask you more about your rich career, and usually in an important career like yours, it starts off with the early childhood, because early childhood and early years always have an impact on our personality.
Absolutely, and both my parents wrote, so I grew up thinking writing is what grown-ups do, and my father would always tell me stories when we were going to bed. I was one of 6 children, and Dad would come and sit and tell us stories, and we'd give him ideas of what to tell stories about. And then when I was 6, I wrote my first book. It was very, very bad, very boring. It was about a little mouse who lived on a boat, and basically it was just a list of all the furniture that he had. He had a chair, he had a table, he had a bowl, he had a plate. Nothing happened. Very dull. Mm-hmm. So then as you get older, you don't think that what you have to say is interesting. Why would anybody want to read what you wrote? You don't have anything to write. And it takes a long time, I think, to gain the courage to realize that books have to be written, stories have to be told, somebody has to do it. Could be me. Mm-hmm. And
definitely.
in the end, that was what happened.
Mm-hmm. That's great, and I guess that you had the same spirit. You injected the same spirit with your daughter as well.
Yes. Because as my father always told me stories, so when I was putting her to bed, Mummy tell me a story, okay, what about? And we started making up these stories about a character, Charlie, a little boy, and she would tell me what he was like, and I would say, okay, and what did he do? Oh, he goes to France. How does he get there? He goes on a whale. And a whale? Okay, you take a whale to France, fair enough. And then this developed, as she grew older, into actual books for children, which we wrote together and we published. And so then she and I traveled the world together as one author. We had a fake name. We were called Zizou Korda, the name that we share. And we went to Japan and to Thailand and to Argentina and to the USA and all around Europe. It was a lot of fun. It was good fun.
Lots of fun is also part of you as a journalist, and I know, Louisa, that you have been giving a great hand with several publications, including The Guardian. Tell me more about exploring the journalist in you, and in a way or another, how did it, like, you know, inspire you throughout?
It always does. The thing about journalism is because you have access to real things and you're talking to real people, and so you have this responsibility. And you get to go to extraordinary places. Again, I spent a lot of time traveling to America for Marie Claire magazine, and I went to India as a journalist as well as around Europe, writing features, not doing politics, not foreign correspondence, but interviewing, and particularly interviewing women about how things were for them.
Who is the woman that you wish to interview and it happened?
The woman who I wished to interview and it happened? Okay, I don't know if people know about her in Egypt, but Tammy Wynette, country and western singer. She is like the Kulthum of America. She is a woman who sings the songs about love and family and heartbreak. And she died a few years ago. She was, you know, her big hits were in the 60s and 70s. And I went to her house in Nashville, Tennessee, and it says, you know, she's the queen of country music. I was so tongue-tied, I could hardly speak to her, because I admire her very much. Great
that you talked about our icon, Kulthum, and while we were celebrating Valentine's Day, so
yes,
it's always Kulthum tunes and rhythm, you know.
Yeah. Well, I heard her music before I came to Egypt, and you know, songs like Anta Umri and El Atlal, they just, you know, they speak to everybody. If you speak Arabic or don't, if you've been to Egypt or not, you hear, you know, all the passion in the way that she sings. So beautiful. I used to listen to her in the car a lot as well.
How about your passion for Egypt? I know that you did write about Egypt, and actually you have more friends in Egypt. Tell me more about memories in Egypt, and how did it start as a writer to write about the country?
Well, I invented a character for my very first novel, and I didn't really know what she was like, and so I was thinking around her, you know, where she'd been, who she was, and I decided that she used to live in Egypt. Now she was living in London, but she used to live in Egypt. And I wrote about her, and I looked up stuff about Egypt to kind of fill it in a bit, but I didn't take that book to Egypt. But then the book went down very well, and I decided to write another book about her, and I thought, you know what? You have to go there. You can't get away with this. You have to go to Egypt.
You have to experience
really
it
work
yourself.
Out. Because she was a belly dancer, but she had a bad leg, so she wasn't dancing anymore. But she had worked as a dancer in the hotels and so forth. And so I had to come and invent a life for her, and so that brought me here. And then I came quite often just because there are so many levels of things. You know, on the one hand there's, you know, dancing, on the other hand there's Ibn Tulun, on the other hand there's Luxor and the Valley of the Kings, and everywhere you look there's history, but also this fantastic modern town. You know, these amazing hotels and these, you know, the wonderful art and you know, the glamorous people. So you know, who should you be fascinated by, Akhenaten or Kulthum? It's all happening at the same time.
Have you ever thought of writing about those glamorous people?
Oh, I don't think I would dare. Modern people.
The human side of the Egyptians.
It would be tricky, you know. I don't speak Arabic. I have my 5 words. I think it would be a bit presumptuous. Even my main Egyptian character in the earlier books, I gave him one English parent, just so that I could, you know, not, because now I'm a more experienced novelist and it's easier to get into the heads of people who are not from the same background or culture as me. But then I was very nervous, because even to write a man, you know, let alone to write an Egyptian man, I mean, I know what it's like to be a human being, but it's always that leap of the imagination, so I think I'd be a bit scared.
The beat of Egypt, and mentioning Kulthum, another icon definitely, if we're today exploring writings and the life of a renowned journalist and author, would be definitely Naguib Mahfouz and the trilogy, and more about the spirit of Egypt.
Well, I think this is another reason for not writing about Egypt, because when you have an example of books which are so human, which so take you into the life of a city and different types of people within it, and certainly as a visitor, you read these books and then you look out the window or you look up from your table at the cafe I think, okay, this is where they come from. This is what informs, because there are things going on that I would never know about. Because, you know, because I'm a visitor, I'm not living here, and though I have friends who live here, you know, they're just one set of people. But with Mahfouz, he gives you such a big tour of all kinds of people. He's a wonderful writer.
Wonderful bit of human relations and talking about baby love and talking about the tree of pearls and more. What do you have more in store, Louisa? Which is the story that remains still untold in your opinion?
Well, many, many stories. I've just finished writing a memoir, so this is part of my own story about my husband who died. So that was a big story for me. And, you know, journalism is true, or should be, and then you come to fiction where you can make it up, so that makes it easier. But then when you're writing about your own memories and your own life, and you try to be true, but actually when things were a long time ago and memory plays tricks, it really does. I was quite sure about a party where I met somebody, and I knew which building it was in, and I went back to that neighborhood with the woman whose party it was, and I think, oh, there's that building where you had that party. She said, I never lived in that building. I've never been inside that building. I got it all completely wrong. So then you have to try to find a new kind of truth in the story.
Talking about heroes, definitely each one of us has a certain hero on mind while writing, while performing. Who's your hero?
Oh, I have so many. I have so many heroes. Oh, you mean as writers?
As writers, as figures, who inspires you?
Oh, well, who inspires me really, I'm afraid, is my daughter. Because when you have a child and you want to do the best for them and they make you work hard and they always love you, but they tell you off. But of public people, I tell you who inspires me, Michelle Obama.
Why?
Because
Why, Louisa?
of the work that she does for children and for health, and the way that she had that very difficult job of being the First Lady, and she was so gracious, intelligent, and I think they're a lovely couple. And you know, the extra work that they have to do being a black couple in America, and just, you know, no affairs, no accusations, no nonsense. Those two, but particularly her, because I think to be the wife of a very powerful man when you're a very intelligent woman, it takes a certain talent.
What does it take to be a talented author, in your opinion?
Oh, I know exactly what it takes. You have to have some talent. You have to work very hard. But lots of people have talent, lots of people work very hard. You also have to be really lucky. Because there are many great books that are never published, and many great books that are published, they're never reviewed, they're not really read. There are so many good writers out there. So, you know, the success I have, I give thanks for it daily, because lots of people have all the talent and work that I have, but they didn't have the luck.
Speaking about women empowerment, and definitely you have lots of heroes in that context. What does it take for the whole world to recognize the effort and the contributions of women today?
That's a very good question. A very modern question, also a very ancient question. I think that women are doing everything they need to do. We're behaving beautifully, we're being intelligent, we're working hard, we're bringing up children, we're earning money, we're being polite, we're doing everything we need to do. And now it is time for the men to recognize this. And when a man looks at a woman, he needs to know that as well as being his wife or his sister or his mother, and that a woman that he doesn't know is also a wife, a sister, a mother, a daughter, but also she is herself. So I think it's time for the men to become feminists, and they will be so happy when they do, because it's so much easier.
What are your wishes actually for 2017? We're still February, and I guess that the sky is the limit.
Yes, my wish is always the same. My wish is for love and peace. For no war, no fighting, everybody being kind to each other, leaving each other alone, being friendly. It's very idealistic, but this is what I like.
Thinking about opportunities for today and speaking about women empowerment and talking about your daughter, would you love that she would be like a very famous journalist and author like you?
Oh, I would love her to do whatever fulfills her as a woman, as a human being. She likes to write, but she says, you know, like I did at that age, that she hasn't lived long enough. She's 24, so she doesn't have anything to say yet. I think journalism is very different now, and you know, the future of journalism is a very interesting topic, because as the media change and as, you know, politics and societies change, the job will become a different one, I think, even now. And I think being well known for what you do is good, because it means you can keep working. But to be very famous, I don't think it doesn't look much fun. I think when you see them scurrying around and people photographing them the whole time, that kind of famous, you don't want that.
Louisa, tell me more about the sense of creativity in writing. How writing a story can bring the creativity out of you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it works. People, you know the singer Leonard Cohen, and people would say to him, "Where do you get your ideas from?" And his answer to this was, "If I knew, I'd go there more often." So with the creativity, yeah, it's, you know, if you work hard enough, then it can come, and then you find that you've created something that wasn't there before. But it comes in all ways. You know, you create a baby that wasn't there before, or a meal. But when you do your work and other people like it, or they're interested, it's a very special kind of fulfillment. It's a great honor.
Right. Which is the most difficult story that you covered? It would remain there in memory.
Oh, as a journalist?
Yes.
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
We always remember those stories, Louisa.
Yeah, there are a couple. I mean, in one way, the most difficult was I went to Russia, where I was trying to interview a woman who had been a model in London, and she'd become a pop star, and she was very famous in Siberia. And I was to go to Siberia, where she was performing in mines, in the camps with Russian miners in the middle of nowhere. And the weather was so bad, and I got stuck in Moscow, and I spent 4 days in this airport being snowed on, literally surrounded by Russian people trying to make me drink vodka, and sleeping in the airport. And then there was a look-alike convention turned up from Ukraine, and everybody was dressed like Hitler and Lenin and Mussolini, and I'm like, what is happening here? And I never got to the story. I never got to Siberia, so that was funny. But otherwise, it's when you talk to people who have very, very hard lives. And normally, if you don't speak their language, you've got a translator, and the translator is very calm, but you're looking at a woman who's, you know, she's lost children, she's going out to work gathering salt every day, you know how hard she works, you see her feet, the skin is split. And, you know, I sit here, and I'm going back to my hotel, and think I can put her words out, you know, at one remove, I can write what she thinks and feels, but can I do anything that will help to change the injustices? And you know, if it's in my own country, I can, but if it's in another country, what can I do? You know, I can give some money to Oxfam. Okay, but
who's the most challenging personality that you have interviewed?
Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford, the movie star. He was quite rude. Maybe he was tired. It was an interview with several journalists and him. And I asked him a question about violence in the cinema, and he chose not to understand my question because I was challenging a little. I was saying, like, why do you have to do it?
And were you quite persistent that you would get the answer?
Well, because we have to take turns coming round. So he pretended not to understand. So there was different journalists from different countries asking questions. Finally it got to me, I asked my question, and he says, I don't understand your question. And then it came round to me again, and I asked the question again. I made it more clear why. And I asked him about whether being heroic in films made people expect him to be a hero in real life. And he said he didn't understand that either, and I thought, that's not a difficult question. You're not a stupid man. I asked quite clearly. Anyway, he was annoying. I think maybe he was just tired or cross.
And what was the most embarrassing situation as a journalist that happened to you?
Quite a few actually. Okay, when I was working as a motorbike journalist, and I used to test ride the motorcycles. They'd get a man to do it, and then they'd get me to do it. And you know, they'd laugh at me a lot. But one time we all went to a race, a motorcycle race in France, and it was a bit like a holiday for the magazine. And then in the next issue of the magazine, they had a photograph of me wearing my bikini lying on the motorbike. And I was just on holiday, you know, and they put it in the magazine, and I didn't know they were going to
paparazzi style.
Yeah, and I didn't know they were going to put it in there, and then there I am, and like...
Well, wrapping up, let me ask you more about the idea that you will be working on, which is the idea that is going to formulate your next novel.
My next novel, I'm really quite happy about my next novel because I know what it's about. It seems very sad, and there are two couples, and the husband of one, the wife of the other die. So it's very sad. We start with funerals. But then we go into the afterlife. And the afterlife is like the embassy when you're going for a visa. There's just queues everywhere. It's like trying to get through on the telephone, please hold. And there are many, many people, they haven't been sorted out yet. And so it's mostly set in the afterlife, and it's a comedy. And really what they're doing is they're trying to get their widows back together as a couple to make them happy. They're trying to make them happy from the afterlife by reappearing and being ghosts. And it's very silly, but quite fun.
Louisa Young, British author and journalist, if you would direct a message to fellow men in the UK from Egypt, what would you tell them?
Okay, I would say, hey guys, come over. It's so nice here. You can ride around the pyramids on a horse and meet lovely Egyptian people.
It was lovely meeting you.
You too. Thank you so much.
Always an honor and pleasure to have you.